Good morning, everybody. Welcome to First Center for Spiritual Living in New York City. I want to welcome all of you on the Zoom call and all of you on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Those of you who are watching us live, I always want to invite you to join us on Zoom. Send us a message so we can connect you. And if you're watching us through the week or the weeks to come, send a message to the center so that we can send you an invitation and an email. That way you can be a part of the different things we do. We have a Louise class every Thursday at 7 p.m. And we meet every Sunday morning at 10:45 for a meditation, followed by our service at 11. It's really important, I think, for people to stay connected with a center like us, because we serve to remind you of the truth of who you are. And it's very easy to forget who you are. So we join together in a treatment, and knowing in this perfect moment, we become aware that each of us has the power, the creativity, the wisdom, and the intelligence to live our lives the way we choose to live them. That we're free to believe whatever we wish to believe. We're free to worship and honor this source, this God, the way we choose to do. And we're free to move beyond our challenges, beyond our obstacles, problems, and live and move, and have our being in a consciousness of love and of solution. For that wisdom is at the heart of our being. That is the cosmic wisdom of the universe made manifest through each of us. In this awareness, we let this perfect morning unfold, and so it does. So here we are. We're going to be talking about love and the way it works. And Dr. Bill was addressing the same lesson years ago, and he was using William Edelin's book, Spirit, as much of his source material. And Edelin would have said in different words that people like to think of their thinking. Their own particular thinking is awake and rational. But is it? This wide awake thinking, this woke thinking, we might say today, has led people astray from time to time and time again. First, everyone can't be right all the time. People in general are largely living in reaction to one another in all kinds of ways. You just see it in the world. You see it as you watch the news. You see it in world affairs. There's very little original thinking going on when you're reacting. And a lot of people, if not most of the masses, live in reaction. To do different, you have to slow down. And you have to clear your mind and sit and, think for yourself, new thoughts. Because we have many stored memories and we have many preconceived ideas. We've had them since we're little children. They've been reinforced over and over again. And oftentimes these beliefs and ideas and stances that we take prevent us from being very open to what's happening and what might be new, what might be fresh and in the now. Because we bring the old stories into the present. Ernest Holmes would say we're carrying around a lot of baggage or dead wood or corpses. All those terms have been used. And all the stuff we carry from the past really prevent us from being completely here and now, to see life again with wonder. When we truly wake from the old things that we carry around, perhaps we'll realize that we've been dreaming to a large extent. We carry all this stuff with us. And I oftentimes through the years have said to my clients, I come from a different generation. I say, you're tripping. You're into a story. If we slow down, if we take a moment, if we take a pause, and we allow ourselves to center ourselves and go to a deeper place, we can begin to let go of a lot of things, a lot of ideas that don't serve us, a lot of opinions. Life is moving forward at absolute warp speed. People worldwide have been letting go of archaic beliefs, religious traditions all over the world. It doesn't matter which religion, all of them. The youth, the generations that are half my age and younger, have been letting go of this stuff. My generation let go of a lot of it. So we already know what direction it's going. People are letting go of all that old stuff. Older folks can't believe how fast it's happening because the world is really not the same as it was anywhere. And people have always grappled with change. Every generation that's talking about, the world is going to hell, they think. But that's not the case exactly. What's happening is the world is changing, but now it's changing more rapidly than ever before. We've talked about all of human knowledge doubling every couple days, if you can even conceive of that. And I know in my own lifetime I can think of many of things that were invented, that were great, that have already become obsolete. And the thing is, a lot of our old spiritual, religious traditions that, we hung our hat on years ago, you just don't buy it anymore. You know better. And we've stepped out of it. The younger generations are embracing spirituality much better than many of us because they're not looking for it in a temple or a building or a church. They understand that there's an energy that's indwelling. They may call it different names than what we use, but they have an understanding. So all of us are embracing it to varying degrees, and the more we embrace the idea that there is one life that's in us and in everyone, then we move to a higher consciousness. And admittedly, it doesn't often look like we're moving to a higher place, but nonetheless we are. All paths and activities lead humankind forward, and they're moving us towards an idea of an interconnected existence, where there's a realization that there's an energy and a power. And it doesn't give a darn about religions or ideologies. And again, we can look to the youth who are now discovering the sacred, the spiritual, without the theology, without the faces of saints or messengers, without rules, without dogma, without condemnation of one group over another. The world continues to grow in awareness and consciousness that will eventually unite and heal. We're evoluting along. We're growing in that direction. We're all letting go of more and more primitive understanding, and we're getting into the truth and essence of life. Borrowing from the author Adkisson, the biggest barrier standing between us and this rediscovery of the sacred and the clinging to archaic, anthropomorphic, is the clinging to these old ideas, these anthropomorphic, supernatural gods above, out there somewhere. The notion that there's some kind of God or source that's playing favorites with one group over another or one person over another. All that stuff needs to be released. The idea of some type of power that's watching out over you or me and rewarding me or rewarding someone else and punishing others. All of that stuff we release and let go. The sacred that we talk about has always been part of human consciousness. It often gets crowded out, though. It's in me, it's in you, but it gets crowded out because we get distracted very quickly with everything we're doing. We have endless ways that we distract ourselves and entertain ourselves. We come into this teaching and we realize just to live and breathe as a human being is a sacred act. And as we think of atheists as an example, or many people who claim to be atheists, all they're really doing is rejecting all the organized religion. Most of what we call the unchurched and unreligious people still, if you ask them, will recognize in one way or another the sacredness of existence. From noting the breath from our bodies to the rhythmic turns of the constellations and the mystery within all of these expressions that we observe, all of us. When you take away the anthropomorphic supernatural God or these different religious sects of any kind, when you take all that stuff away from religion and all the saints, all the way-showers, and all the dogma, what remains? Adkisson asked. And the answer, he said, is everything remains. The sacred reality remains. This immanent God, God within you, God within your brothers. God within everyone remains. We here in this teaching celebrate a way of life founded on the sacredness of our very existence. The sacred life is the life lived in the practice and the pursuit of truth, the pursuit of excellence and love. It's daily standing in awe before the unfathomable mystery that dances through the electrons and the galaxies, standing in awe of nature, and realizing that there's more to living the sacred life. We invite this sacred awareness, the awareness of this connection into our daily life. We invite spirit, and we practice the presence. We extend this awareness to others. We extend this awareness we bring it into our day-to-day living. We realize that every encounter is a holy encounter. We learn to commune with life and live the affirmative life. Each of us who practices teaching are lifters. We give people encouragement. We give them affection wherever we can. And so it is. The final chapter has not been written for any one of us. So we can turn it around. We can stop whatever we're doing if we're taking a negative path or if we're lost for a moment. We can turn our life around. We can imagine. We can visualize. We can invite spirit into our awareness. We can become aware. We can remember the sacred. And then perhaps we can move from warlike habits of anger and resentments and reaction. We can move from all of that towards peace, where everyone is included and seen as valuable. Dr. Bill was commenting years ago on the direction religious science was taking, and he thought it was emphasizing too much materiality. He said, you can have whatever you want in our teaching, of course, but he says that isn't really where our focus is. I mean, I know we teach prosperity courses and abundant living, but I thought perhaps it's time to come back to what Dr. Holmes was teaching, because materialism is not our main focus. It never was. It's not even appropriately a focus. Getting things isn't what we're all about here. I realized that when I was playing the movie The Secret at a center in Florida and had a class for 6 months afterwards. A lot of the young people who were coming to class were really learning how to demonstrate more prosperity. And there's nothing wrong with that in and of itself, but we really have here a much deeper teaching. We're involved with New Thought, and there's nothing really new about New Thought. New Thought's an ancient understanding. It's about metaphysics. Religious science is a very powerful teaching. And we would understand, prosperity is more or less a byproduct, a natural byproduct of an evolving consciousness. And that when the consciousness evolves, whatever materialism is, it's there, but it's not really the primary goal. And the goal is not to affirm away every problem that we have, only to have it repeated again and again. Rather, the teaching itself centers itself on the awareness at the deepest level of our being that we are connected with life. And we're one with life. We are one with the one. And realizing that each of us are individualizations of this one life. And that we're here to grow and we're here to evolve and express more and more of what life is. We're here to have a genuine experience, a first-hand revelation of the divine within. And this can only come from communing with it and having your own experience. It can't come from the minister. It can't come from anywhere else. As you keep on practicing the presence, you're going to be courting the divine, and you're going to have your own experience, and you will prove these things to yourself. There was an author, Buckminster Fuller, who years ago wrote a wonderful poem called "No More Secondhand God, No More Secondhand God for Me." It still stands today, still wonderful ideas in that poem. You can look it up. A couple ideas I'll share. No longer will it suffice to have somebody else tell us about God. It will no longer suffice to set up rules and regulations that no human being has ever been able to live up to. It will no longer suffice to have theologies that are based upon superstition and magic. It will no longer suffice. It has to be a first-hand experiential revelation of the divine within. So that's what we teach. We teach you how to commune with life and have a first-hand experiential revelation of the divine within. That realization is what we're always after here. It's the only salvation any of us ever have. And in my earnest hope is that more and more of us begin to take a little deeper dive into the teaching and realize it's not about getting things or getting rid of things. Rather, it's about revealing the true nature of this essence that we have. Finding that within ourselves and learning to rely upon our connection with this source. And as you do this, all the rest of these things will fall into place nicely. The more expanded your consciousness becomes, the more everything starts to work out. Of course, as you do this, and as we do this, you're going to find out you're in a class, a rarefied class, because most of the world doesn't live from that place of understanding. But that's the way of it. It used to be said that this understanding, this God in you, is the best kept secret of all time. And it is. So we come into this teaching and we understand how great you are, and we will remind you of the truth of your being and how great you are. And as you learn to live it more and more, you're going to be on a road that's definitely less traveled. And that's the way it is. What's appropriate, again, is that we recognize that we have this gift and we begin to practice this presence and utilize it. And there's power for good that we have, and we begin to use it. Whatever other people are doing, whatever they're believing, whatever they're telling you about, whatever their theology is, we're fine with it. Whatever their rules and regulations, though, that they're living with have nothing to do with you or me. What we focus on here in the teaching is the revelation of the divine that's within each one of us, and we're growing to understand that it's in everyone. So God in me recognizes God in you. And when we do that, everything else, again, falls into place. So I would add to what Buckminster Fuller said, no more secondhand God, no more formula religions, no more dangling the carrot of salvation out in front of anyone. Because the simple awareness of spirit, or God is, becomes God is, and God is within me, becomes the central point of my life. And each of us are individualizations of this spirit. We are given every single tool that we need to live life fully. And the way we choose to live life is about learning and expanding and growing. The ultimate challenge is to find out who we are. When we find that, all the rest of it gets clear. And that awareness, let's continue with our morning lesson, love leaps. Well, let's amplify that for a minute. We're always talking about two things in every Sunday lesson, love and law. We're always talking about them. Love is the givingness of the universe. It keeps pouring itself. It keeps giving to you according to your consciousness. And law, again, is the method of its giving. Every talk that any minister ever gives, or I've ever given, is always going to be based upon the premise of either love or law. And each week we try to bring a different viewpoint or perspective on this. It's always appropriate to talk about love. I'd like to talk about love this morning, but not in terms of love in relationships, Valentine's Day, Cupid kind of love. We are learning more, we're leaning more into the love that's in you, the love that you bring with you. We don't always find this kind of love in relationships, by the way. The majority of people who get married sadly, a divorce. I don't know why it is, but it's just a fact. And many who are married are not happy. Many keep looking for love in other people, in relationships, and never quite find what they're after, because you don't get it there. You either bring it with you, or you don't get it. You don't get any. This is something that's very difficult for people to understand, and I don't think I understood when I was younger. You either bring this love with you, or you don't get it. Some years ago at a conference, one of our ministers made the statement that there's not enough love here. There's too much intellect and there's not enough love, and went on and on. And looking around, I said to her, how much love did you bring with you? Of course, that question wasn't really well thought of. How much love, when someone's coming, the lack of love and all this, the question is, how much love have you brought with you? Because if you came up here expecting to get love, good luck with that. Love isn't something you get from anybody else. It's something that you bring with you. Well, how do you bring it with you? How do you bring it with us? Well, many of us, when we were children, thought we'd meet the right person, right? You'd have some type of a fairy tale relationship or marriage, and romance, and you would live happily ever after. And it's sad to say, more often than not, this isn't the way it works out. As we look for love and because if you're looking for love and recognition in other people, we're seeking our good outside of ourselves, then we're already setting ourselves up for trouble. And then we start looking for it, not necessarily in our marriages, but we'll look for it everywhere else in our relationships. What people are always looking for, though, is love. And love is like looking for God. We're looking for love in all these sundry places, and we're looking for God. The craziest places we've gone looking for God. And I can speak to my own youth. Wherever there was a preacher or a new way or a new thing, I'd be there. The last place I was ever looking for love or God was within. And that's the only place you're ever going to find either. The love you're looking for is in you, operating through you. And the God you're looking for is in you, operating through you as well. Now, you might at times have felt lonely or lost and thought that you were meant, you thought that if you met this right person, you'd feel much better and different. And out of loneliness or wanting a physical relationship, you wanted to get married. You thought getting married would mean you wouldn't have to live alone. You wanted somebody to take care of you, maybe. You might have thought it's no fun being single. And so marriage was an objective. Some people wanted to get married for security. People want to get married for every kind of reason you can imagine. Different reasons for different people. Over the years, I've heard people talk about, wondering where their relationship is going. And that's not usually a good sign. They're not talking about the essence of the relationship, the love that's being shared and expressed. And these questions that are being asked are generally, when you're talking about where the relationship is going, it's usually about expectations that are not being met. And there is disappointment and hurt in the picture. Love, as I define it, or as we talk about here in the teaching, presents itself as the unconditional acceptance of the validity of your being with all your foibles. So we're talking about here loving self. That's how we define it in the teaching. It presents itself, again, as the unconditional acceptance of the validity of your being with all your foibles and all your hang-ups, including sometimes your nasty thinking, angry thoughts, insecurities, and negative messaging. That kind of love is the unconditional acceptance of yourself here and now as being perfect, whole, and complete. Now, that love does not mean that your behavior is always going to be perfect. It doesn't mean your bank account is always going to be perfect or your job is perfect. It doesn't mean anything is going to be perfect. It means that you're perfect. And how could you be perfect if your actions are not perfect? Well, it's very simple. You are created out of whatever perfection exists in the universe. Therefore, the seed of that perfection is within you as a possibility and a potential. Tell me what is not spiritual. If everything was created out of spirit, then everything has to be spiritual. As my mother used to say to me and the rest of us, it's entirely up to you to create your life the way you want. The focus and the direction that we channel this energy becomes a matter of our own choice. It's important to understand you have always, always been spiritual. Even though you're doing things that appear to be not spiritual, we might say dumb even, right? You have always been spiritual. You were created out of a divinity. In the beginning was this source, this God, and it created everything that is or was or ever will be. And you have to ask the logical question, well, God created everything out of what? And the answer must be out of itself, because there never was anything else. God is all that there is. And that leads you to the obvious conclusion that you are God. Now, don't run out of here and tell everybody you're God, because they'll probably lock you up. And most people won't understand what you're saying anyway. We will understand what you're saying in our teaching. I think you have to understand to the very best of your ability that if you come into a teaching like this, you have received a tremendous gift, just if you can understand these words and be here. And you have this gift called life, and the awareness that you have in this life, that you're alive and life is responding to you. And this gift is perfect. There's nothing missing from your life. You have all that you need. You have what it takes. Now, there may be something missing in your life materially. There may be something missing in your life from a health point of view. But there's nothing missing from the life force itself, which is what you are. The life force, that incredible intelligence that no one has ever been able to really see or define, is what you are. It's the intelligence that allows you to articulate feelings and ideas. It's perfect. And it came out of a cosmic wisdom. Now, there are some steps involved that I think sometimes they can be hard, right? But they're simple. There's some steps involved in arriving at a point in your own evolution where perhaps, for the first time in your life, you can feel the perfection of what we're talking about. And it begins with forgiveness. It begins with absolute unconditional forgiveness of yourself. I love, accept, and approve of myself exactly as I am. It begins with that. For every single thing that I've done or that I do, it begins with forgiveness. It begins with forgiving whatever we deemed inappropriate with ourselves or others, in any stage of our development, everything that we've done that we thought was illegal, immoral, everything that's caused suffering in our life, we're called to forgive ourselves and others. This is a big task. It's a big thing to do because many of us live our life with a lot of regrets and things we've done and said and all of that. You know, we want to come to a place where we let it all go, and so we can be free. We're each here for such a brief period of time, and life goes by so fast, right? So if you want to be connected with Source, we really have to do whatever we can to clear all that away. And forgiveness is really the first step. Dr. Bill always thought that we're going to go somewhere else after this earthly existence, where we will continue to learn, and that he thought that seems to be the nature of the universe. He said, I could be wrong about this, but I don't think so. Everything that I've ever read or studied about near-death experiences will tell me a couple things. There's two major questions that come up. How much have you learned, and how much have you loved? To the degree that there is no love, there's no acceptance of who you are as an individual. To the degree that there is unforgiven business in your own psyche, then it becomes virtually impossible for you to really and truly love another person. Because you're loving from a guilty place, a guilty conscience, and you're loving from a place of disconnect. And that really gets in the way. Love cannot deal with you if you're coming from a guilty conscience. Love can only deal from the centrality of what it truly is. So, I can't be kind to you unless I'm first kind to myself. Otherwise, it's a bit of an act. It's a cover-up. I cannot be loving you if I'm not first loving to myself. We have a saying in religious science: do something nice for somebody without getting found out. I repeat that idea often, many lessons, many sessions, counseling classes. And when people are having really difficult times and I see them and I know they're suffering and going through a tough time, I oftentimes wonder, if they could do this, they would get out of they would transcend a lot of their own pain. If you can do something nice for somebody else, just to reach out and touch someone in a positive, loving way, it will make a big difference in your life. And if you do this without being found out, you kind of build a sense of worth and value within yourself that really makes you strong. We don't know about any person that's ever lived, including Jesus or any of the prophets, no person that didn't have something that they had done or had been ashamed of. They didn't make mistakes of all kinds, because we're human beings, right? And some people made some really big mistakes. We don't know of anyone who has not suffered because their own self-worth was put in jeopardy by people laying guilt trips on them. I don't know any one single individual who's not hurt badly at some times in their lives for what people have said or done about them either. When we come into this teaching and we get centered in it, we grow in our understanding of what life is, and we realize that people are doing the best they can with what they know. And we grow more and more as we stay connected every week. As you really learn to love yourself, you get stronger. And, inbound stuff, it's like, water off a duck's back. People can throw anything they want at you. And that's always a bigger statement about themselves than it is you. As you get stronger in the teaching and centered in truth, you know that you're really being about Spirit's business. And you won't always be understood, but you'll have understanding. We learn to live ourselves, and we live our lives in a different kind of way. Again, we're knowing people are doing the best they can, and we live with a kind of courtesy and care, and we treat other people, as our brothers and our sisters in spirit, even though some of their behaviors may not be the best. Loving people know that there are aspects of their personality that are sometimes not the best, but we immediately go towards forgiveness of ourselves. Loving people learn to catch ourselves as we go astray. Again, the saying from some of the Louise Hay material, remembering and forgetting, it's the game that we play. As you stay close with the teaching and you see yourself, you making mistakes, you lovingly bring yourself back. And you tell yourself, I don't have to do that anymore. And I sure as heck don't have to punish myself for it. So the guilt is useless. When we release the need for guilt or have people, throw it on us. So what can we do to forgive ourselves for all of our alleged or real mistakes? How can I be a quality person living a quality life if I'm not forgiving myself? Well, one thing you might try is do a little inventory and see the areas of your life that you might be hanging on to sense of guilt or shame, wherever you're not totally clear, so that you can experience and get yourself to a place where you can experience self-acceptance and self-love. All of us who are in a teaching like this are on a pathway of transformation. We're all growing and expanding. And here's the real secret. The whole world is expanding and evolving. I refuse to keep looking on the news and talking about, all the problems, because I know the truth. The truth is that life is moving forward. The younger generations already know it. They've thrown aside a lot of these old religious ideas, the ideas of difference, and they understand that, it's a much more inclusive process. And Spirit is moving through everybody perfectly all the time. You might not like what you see in yourself. You may not like what you see in the world. But the thing is that life is wooing you and calling you to step up into a greater place. And to see yourself as one with the one and to understand that it's unfolding perfectly in the world and in everyone else. I think forgiveness, getting back to forgiveness and love, is the only key that we really need to work with in terms of learning what love is all about. Then when you do that, your relationships blossom and flower. They really do. Because there's no hidden agendas anymore. There's no more unresolved anger or rancor, resentment, or jealousy or hostility. It's gone with forgiveness. You're setting them all free. You're setting yourself free. It's dissolved in the midst, and you become a clear, loving individual in the process. So let's close it today with a treatment, an affirmative prayer. And if we choose, and if we center ourselves in the awareness that we're one with the one, let us once and for all unconditionally forgive ourselves. Let us forgive others. Release any resentments or discord. And as we do so, we're freeing ourselves. We give great thanks for having had the pain, because the pain was our teacher. And we've learned that we don't need it any longer. Not one more day, not one more moment. We don't need the anger or the resentment. We don't need any of this that comes towards ourselves or anyone else. Not one drop of guilt either. Not one more, I wish I could have, or I wish I did. But rather, we are centered in this perfect understanding and awareness that we are loving and that we're able to love and we're able to receive love. And in this consciousness, we give great thanks for being who we are, love made manifest today, tomorrow, forever, and so it is. Thank you. We'll see you at the other side of the break.